Hey, everybody, this is Paul with the Curators podcast, and I am here with a special guest, Julia Ross. Julia, it is a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Paul. I'm
Yes,
very happy to be
Julia,
here.
thank you. Julia is the founder of the Nutrient Therapy Institute based in California. I believe you're in the Bay Area, and we recently discovered each other through a mutual friend and found that we are both supporters of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Can you describe the work that you do out there and the importance of it, and perhaps maybe give us a little historical perspective because you've been at this for a while?
Well, let me begin with my beginnings here professionally, and then I can link it with my support of Robert Kennedy. In graduate school, the only internship that paid was in the one of the very few addiction treatment programs in San Francisco. And I had run out of my student loan, and I very reluctantly took an internship position in this agency. And I have been working in this field ever since. And that was in the late 1970s, when addiction treatment, as we know it now, was in its infancy. It was born in Minnesota, eventually reached the West Coast, and I entered the scene about the same time as this treatment model that has been actually failing us very seriously since the 1980s, when the crack cocaine epidemic hit. And it's really not rebounded. Really, the relapse rates have only become worse as more and more very serious drug addictions have been added to the list. And like Robert Kennedy, I have been looking for ways beyond the conventional existing techniques to help people who are addicted to alcohol, to drugs. And now the biggest addiction really worldwide is to processed foods.
Right. Yeah. And the campaign talks about that. We're talking about sugar, high fructose corn syrup. We know that there are many ingredients. In fact, I believe there's over 1,000 ingredients that are presented in our food on the store shelves in America that are banned in Europe. If you compare those ingredients, you would find a stark difference. People actually go to Europe to get healthy, and they eat basically the same foods, but they lose weight and they look great. Right?
Well, that's less and less true. Unfortunately, the ingredients that are the most addictive and obesogenic are creeping all over the world. And that's why for many years, for example, Kuwait is the #1 country in obesity in the world. France and Germany have significant obesity problems because Paris is riddled with Jack in the Boxes and similar outlets for American food, and that's true all over the world. So this is my passion and my hope that as president, Mr. Kennedy will beef up the FDA so that there can be meaningful regulation of the food industry, which actually acknowledges that its products are causing our epidemic of diabetes as well as obesity, and makes sort of frail forays into what they're going to do about it someday, but a real FDA could speed that up.
I'm going to present the works that you've compiled here.
Thank you.
This is on your website, and so you are highly accomplished as an author as well. Is your most recent book, which one of them is on this list?
The most recent book is on the left. It's The Craving Cure, which is a book about our deadly and disfiguring addiction to primarily processed carbohydrates. I 2 months ago, I received a call from Turkey, health professionals in Turkey telling me that they are now number 3 in obesity in the world. And this is one of the homes of the Mediterranean diet, because the Mediterranean diet is no longer the primary diet of especially young Turks. And they were asking me for help. And I said I'd be glad to do trainings of health professionals. And within a month, they had spread the word. And we have health professionals coming from 5 different countries in the Middle East that are suffering terribly, and 50 doctors from Egypt. Just to give you an idea of what a gigantic public health emergency we're dealing with here.
You know, Julia, I view this, along with several other chronic disease matters, as primarily a political problem with a political solution, meaning that the agencies like the FDA and perhaps the NIH, the HHS, the CDC, and then even more globally, the WHO, they seem to not necessarily be motivated primarily by serving the public interest, but there seems to be more of an agenda to protect the financial incentives of the corporations and the high-level people in those agencies rather than serving the public interest. That's a general statement, but I feel like we've seen enough evidence out there for me to make that statement comfortably. I'm not saying it's true across the board in every way, but the FDA, for example, their budget, approximately half of their budget is paid for by pharmaceutical industry, and that to me creates a misaligned incentive. Bobby Kennedy talks about fortifying these institutions in such a way that their objective is to serve the public interest, and I think that really comes down to bear on our diet in this country and what we're feeding our children, even right down to school lunch programs. I think, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, the other half of the FDA budget is, I'm sure, highly dependent on the fast food industry.
Right.
To keep it. It's interesting you use the word fortification because, there's all this language in the food industry about fortifying, its otherwise nutrient void products.
Yes.
And in Finland, there was a big, there is a big industry, the cracker industry, very popular there. And they had a salt war. Here we're having a sugar war where each company is upping the ante with adding more and more of this new sugar, the high fructose corn syrup and other sugars. But in Finland, they were increasing the amount of salt because salt also has an effect on the pleasure chemistry in the brain. And it got to the point where the national blood pressure rose, appreciably. And so finally the government stepped in, didn't want to, but stepped in and said, if you can't regulate yourselves, we'll have to regulate you. And so they got together and they made a proposal to the government and said, we will agree to a standard inviolable level of salt in all of our products. It's the same in all of our products. And we will make every effort to compete with each other without hurting the population. And that's what happened. And the blood pressure level nationally went down. And the food producers, the snack cracker producers, continued to make good money. And it's an analogy that I just can't help but think about every day almost, that there've got to be ways that we can, and if there's any ever been a candidate who had the courage and the ingenuity to bring something like this about, it would save so many lives, because the consequences of our diet are not just physical with the diabetes rates and so forth, but emotional. You can't run a decent brain, that produces positive emotion without nutritious food. Really, our emotions are literally made out of protein. Specific amino acids have been identified that actually increase levels of neurotransmitters like serotonin, our natural antidepressant. And that is a food that's expensive, and it's a food that that discourages addiction to refined carbohydrates. So for both of those reasons, it's not added to most confections that are popular on the market these days.
So the Finland solution that you talk about, I think in order for that to happen here in the United States, it would require the kind of leadership that Bobby brings to the table. Somebody who can galvanize those forces together for the greater good. We spend in this country, let me break down the numbers a little bit. I believe our healthcare spending is well over $4 trillion in this country, and over 80 per year, that is, and over 80% of that is spent chasing chronic disease. Now, I'll throw a little economic twist on this, and we talk about our using GDP, gross domestic product, as a measure of our economic health. Now, I use the word health there, Julia, in quotes, because how healthy is our GDP if we're chasing all of these chronic diseases to the tune of $3.5 trillion a year? These are diseases that literally did not exist for the most part a couple of generations ago. We're the sickest industrialized nation on earth, even though we're spending twice as much on healthcare as any other country in the industrialized world. So something is seriously wrong in this country that needs to be addressed, and the leadership void is very clear to me. It needs to be filled. From a two-party perspective, Democrats and Republicans, I don't see any solution on the horizon because they've basically been at the helm as these atrocities were unfolding and taking place, to the point where now our life expectancy is even declining in the United States, right? So this is very serious stuff. We're talking, I mean, I can add numbers to this that would make people say, "Oh my God, this is what's going on here, and how did they let this happen?"
Well, I think it's wonderful to have someone in his 70s who probably remembers when this country was a nation of normal weight people with good health, very good natured. You couldn't walk down the street without hearing somebody whistle. I mention this, when I'm speaking to groups, and the younger people they can't imagine such a thing. So it's been very, very recent, 2 million years of excellent health, and then when we were able to banish infectious disease, we were on top of the world, literally, and now we're at the bottom of the world very, very quickly from the 70s until today.
I have a theory on that. You want to hear what it is?
Sure.
My theory is that it's all about the debt, and the fact that we were the world's only superpower gave us the ability to print money ad nauseum, unlike every other country on earth. And the more money we printed, the more debt we incurred, the sicker our society became, not just financially, but physically, mentally, and emotionally too. That's my theory. And I have more, there's much more to it than that, but I paint this picture all the time, Julia, where I say it's like those of us who are baby boomers, I'm a baby boomer, we all remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and what Bedford Falls looked like and the community that it had, and that's kind of the picture that I grew up with as to what America really represented, the best of America. And then along comes Mr. Potter, which is the image of this billionaire class that has taken over our country, what Bobby calls the oligarchs. And on the heels of all of this debt incursion, they've been getting richer and richer while the middle class has been hollowed out. And what gets taken away with that middle class wealth is hope. Hope gets pulled away from these people, certainly from the poor. And when you start to lose hope and this vision of being able to build a successful life, I think that feeds the whole idea of addiction and people looking for other solutions because they're not finding it in the social contract anymore, right?
The fact that the food industry, is so wealthy and so powerful and so prominent and has really monopolized the human race, so that we're not eating real food anymore, means that even those people, and I know this from clinical experience, even those people who are in the oligarch class, who do have financial hope at least, are suffering terribly from anxiety and depression and overstress. You just literally cannot generate normal emotions, whoever you are, without adequate nutrients. So everything that we see has, several dimensions to it. Everything that you've mentioned.
Sure does. Yes, indeed. Why isn't all food everywhere and always organic? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, well, it's a huge topic, but it is hard to sustain good, healthy crops when you're exhausting the soil to make more profit, every year. Right. And so, when we've added, things like pesticides, it's had this sort of made it a cosmetic improvement to the food that we eat, but the hidden poisons that allow it, to thrive are really part of what's killing us.
And you touched on some of those effects before, and I've heard, and I'm a student of this topic more than anything. I hear about things like the destruction of the microbiome, both in the soil and in the human body. The way that these ingredients wreak havoc with our brain function. You talk about that. I think you're familiar with that. So we're seeing IQ levels drop, Julia.
Well, you're talking about two things. You're talking on the one hand about poisons, toxins that are doing specific kinds of damage. But on the other hand, at least as much damage is being done by simple malnutrition. We simply aren't eating food anymore. We're eating, edible drugged substances that temporarily make us feel better, but don't allow us to actually produce what human beings were born to have, which is a pretty decent sense of well-being.
Yeah. So it's a two-pronged problem. Interesting. Yeah. Let's turn our attention, if you don't mind, for a moment to Bobby Kennedy himself. You've gotten to hear him, I'm sure. I don't know if you've met him or not. What is your impression of him personally, Julia?
I really didn't know what to make of him because I never saw him on the media. I never really saw him quoted. And then 6 months ago, I saw a film called Who is Bobby Kennedy, which was just an astonishing self-revelation. And I became very, very interested in learning more. And so I have progressively acquainted myself with the YouTube channel. And, it is so educational. I learn something, really important every time. He doesn't ever do one that duplicates itself, and I'm so used to, in my lifetime, I've never seen a leader, even, President Kennedy did not have his candor, did not have his breadth of mind, I don't think. And of course, his father didn't have much of a chance to speak for himself. But I'm just so grateful that he's willing to take this on. You know, he's willing to risk his life. He's willing to abandon a very good life that he's had so far. I mean, he's probably one of the most accomplished men that's ever run for the office in terms of his legal prowess, you know, and long victories, years of victories. I'm just very happy to have a chance to vote for someone who actually makes sense, who has given me hope. You were talking about not having hope. I didn't realize how long it had been since I had any political hope. But listening to Kennedy talk is like putting on a pair of very good glasses for the first time and realizing that really you haven't seen the truth, you know, what's in front of you. And some of the truths that he's so eloquent about are frightening,
Yes.
about the condition that we're in now. But
Sure.
to feel like I have my feet on the ground in facing what's going on now and the possibility of a way forward with integrity. It's a privilege to vote for him. I'm looking forward to that very much.
It is. It's a privilege and an honor. I feel the same way. And pulling that lever of hope is my primary purpose in life this year, is to spread that word. You know, I don't think I've watched a TV program in the last year, maybe a couple of football games or something like that, you know, but my time has been spent listening to Bobby Kennedy. I would say at least 2/3 of my time is spent listening to Bobby Kennedy, getting to know his platform, getting to know the man. What a beautiful human being he truly is. His humility, his leadership skills, his,
You know,
his
one of the things that has touched me the most is his respect for
yes,
everyone. It's
yes,
including his rivals, his political rivals.
of
He's the
course.
first politician that I've ever heard speak about Donald Trump as President Trump and giving him the respect he
Mhm,
needs for having such a huge following in this democratic country,
mhm,
whether you agree with him or not.
right.
And just recently, when he went through this ordeal in the New York courts about getting on the ballot, not getting on the ballot, I happened to look at the YouTube that evening, and sure enough, he had come home from the ordeal and was on his computer. It wasn't even, you know, a designed presentation, just saying, don't worry. He
That's right.
was concerned about us, you know, and it was so genuine.
We were all pushing the panic button, but he was telling us not to worry. That's
That's
Bobby
right.
Kennedy in a nutshell right there. That's the man that he is. And
Yeah.
you know, it's funny, Julia, because you know we all know about the censorship and how the major media outlets, who are, I'm going to call most of them sock puppets for the industries that pay their bills, but they don't want us to know the real Bobby Kennedy. They really don't want us to know who he is, what he represents, his incredible track record on fighting for people who could not otherwise fight for themselves. What I've heard referred to by my friend Rosie Meza as he is a genuine American superhero. And if you look back at his track record, that term really does apply. And yet, the media not only censors him and silences him, they take it a step further. They then go ahead and create an entirely different narrative that makes him appear to be the opposite of the man that he really is. You know, he's anti this, he's quack that, and you know, those of us who know him are sitting back saying, where are these people coming from? What are they doing? Who are they representing?
This
Well,
is not this is not the media that anyone can be proud of. anymore.
No, no.
It used to be that there was tremendous integrity. And then there was that period of time where the news media was bought up by commercial interests, and we saw the standards dropping. But the hostility and the blackout about Mr. Kennedy is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I have determined that I am never going to buy until this is out in the open and there's been a huge apology, another edition of the New York Times.
Mhm.
That's
Sure,
for sure. And
sure.
there, of course, there's a whole list of outlets that.
It appears that the DNC now. I've maintained that the party that comes across as the most authoritarian is the party that's in power. So right now that's the Democrats, and each party is trying to outflank the other in a race toward authoritarian rule right now. So that tells us that this system of democracy that we've been living under tenuously is really at a crossroads. And Bobby, the two-party system represents to me the Titanic, and it's sinking. And it doesn't matter whether you choose a blue deck chair or a red one. The ship is sinking. And Bobby Kennedy is that new voyage, that new sail, that life raft saying, okay, let's go this route with an independent. Let's take that boxing ring where we're fighting against each other, Julia, which the media loves because it's so profitable for them to have all of us at each other's throats. And Bobby is saying, okay, America, let's lay down the gloves. Let's rise above that boxing ring of conflict. Let's develop solutions together because we have a lot of problems to solve, and we can do it. But we need to stop, fighting each other, and we need to come together. And I think Bobby is the man to do that. It's almost like the DNC right now has flat out demanded to all of the media outlets, do not allow Bobby Kennedy on the debate stage. Do not publish a positive story on him. Do not let the public know who he is. Instead, we're going to tell you what we want the public to think about him. And then they go ahead and do that. And they become stenographers for this state propaganda. That's my experience.
I don't know any other way to explain this abandonment of journalistic integrity across the board.
Mhm.
As I say, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And, we've been suspicious about it for some decades, but this is egregious. No apologies. And I don't see any other way to explain it except that they know what Bobby Kennedy is. They're really aware of all of his strength and beauty, and it just is terrifying them.
It scares them. It does. A man who sees us all as children of God, a man who is godly himself, right? I think you would agree.
That's one of the things that I found the most touching in the film about himself. But he alludes to it, in a number of the YouTube interviews and so forth, is that he really has a true spiritual life, a personal connection with God. And that's another thing I've never heard a politician talk about. I'm not sure about Jimmy Carter. There may have been something there, but I really appreciate it because it's another thing that we seem to be losing, a really
Yes.
precious thing.
I'm seeing a few politicians out there in America who are really embracing that concept of being in the center and seeking solutions and not doing the finger pointing, who really understand what it takes to build a strong foundation for our future and for our children. Our children, Julia, and our grandchildren are the ones who are going to be paying the biggest price here. We've rode the gravy train as baby boomers, We enjoy the undue rewards of being this only reserve currency in the world, and as America has prospered, the rest of the world has not gone along for the ride really as much as we would like. And I just we talk about home ownership, for example, right? And what legacy are we leaving our children? And it scares me. It really does. I have three boys in their 20s, and I worry about the world they're growing up in. And will they even be able to afford a home, or will they be permanent renters?
Well, talking to you earlier made me remember that I paid my own way through graduate school with student loans, and I repaid all those loans because they were $30 a month.
Mm,
Just to give people an idea of, how accessible things used to be,
right,
and could be
right.
again. I mean, frankly, I think renting is just fine. Just having a home of any sort, with the amount of homelessness right now,
Mhm.
is quite an accomplishment.
Yes, yes. You're in the Bay Area, is that right?
I am. I'm just north of San Francisco.
Okay. What do you see there? Do you see it up close and personal?
Oh, yes.
Mm,
Yes.
yeah.
Not in the small town that I live in, but, just a few miles north, in the larger town. And San Francisco, um, I don't go there much anymore.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think Mr. Kennedy's documentary, Recovery America, starts out with his walking down the streets in downtown San Francisco. And I thought it was a marvelous way to introduce the country to what's really going on. Watching
Sure.
people die of overdoses right and left as they walk down the street.
Hmm.
Um,
There's your hopelessness again. Yeah. Yeah. And and he sees it. He. I don't think I've seen any politician work as hard as Bobby Kennedy. Not even close. I mean, he's out there doing the work, pounding the pavement, talking to people, listening to people, bridging the divide.
he has an
Um,
incredible capacity,
he really
an
does. I
incredible
think I
capacity for so
question
many things. Uh,
I question whether there's only one of him. I I I want to offer a reward to somebody who can find the other two or three Bobby Kennedys out there, like his the quadruplet Bobby Kennedys, because he does seem to accomplish a lot in a single day. But
and he seems to be thriving on it.
yes, yes, yes. You know, he lets it come to him. He's not. There's a peace and an aura about it all for him too that just blows me away. And I have said this, Julia. I've said this on a couple of podcasts before that Bobby Kennedy has made me a better man. I had no idea a year and a half ago that I would be on this journey.
Uh-huh.
None at all. I was, living life in the way I was living it. Nothing to be ashamed of, but nothing to jump up and down about. And finding this and harnessing my life to this purpose
Mm,
has opened up so many doors for me, just
mm.
mentally, spiritually. It's challenging at times. It can be stressful, not terribly stressful, but there's just knowing that I'm doing this for a noble purpose, it just makes it all worthwhile. And the people
Yes.
that I've met, so you and I are going to be friends. I I just know that, how often we speak is another matter, but I meet people like you on this journey, and it's just an incredible pleasure, you know. It's a gift.
I agree. I I saw an interview with on a it was a podcast called The Young Turks,
Hmm.
and did you see that?
Cenk Iger is his name, that he interviewed Bobby. And it was a great interview, except for the piece where they started talking about Gaza. it got a little contentious there. I felt like Bobby really maintained his composure,
Well,
but
that's,
Cenk,
that's what I think you mean by learning something. I learned something. It was an extraordinary demonstration of how to hold your own and try to actually reach out and have a dialogue with someone who is intent on just battering you to the ground. And it was a beautiful exchange, I thought.
it to me it reminded me of that Kennedy DNA combined with this incredible spiritual journey that he has grown through, and how that just shines in a moment like that. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I don't, I think I'm quoting accurately that he had 14 years of addiction,
that's
um,
correct. Mhm.
and suffered every day, trying every day, wanting to stop, planning to stop, and disappointing himself. Um, but even aside from that, he's had a lot of suffering in his life, and the
Yes,
recovery
he has.
itself has not been easy.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think it's another thing that allows him to be so compassionate. Is he really knows what it's like to suffer? Is the sense that I have.
Sure. And his suffering didn't stop when he got sober. There was more personal tragedy that he had to endure, of course, we know, and he's, each adversity that he's experienced has made him stronger, has brought him closer to his God, and has made him a better man. So, you know, demonstrating that evolution to all of us, the question is, how many of us are blessed to see it? You know, this campaign is driving its bus right down the center of Main Street, USA, and it's casting its net from the center far and wide, and it's inviting all people to come in. We know that 51% of the electorate today, according to Gallup, identifies themselves as independent. So, that's
Oh,
kind of that
huh.
center of, of course, the media doesn't want that to be published. The DNC and the RNC do not want people to know that, but there's your fundamental truth. And so, what they want is they want to force people to have to choose red or blue. Um, but our country was founded not on one party or the other, but on the independent candidate George Washington. That was the founding of our country, and he was the last independent president.
Ah, the first and the last.
Yes,
Mm.
until Bobby. That's why we call this a 1776 moment for us. Yeah,
Aha.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, Julia, do you have any concluding thoughts you'd like to share with us this evening?
After everything that I've said and you've said in this interview, that the very least I can do is vote for Robert Kennedy. Um, and for the first time in decades, I actually want to do more. I want to be as active as possible. I want to talk to people like you, uh, and uh, and really try to make this a reality.
Mm, thank you. Thank you. I agree. It's a grassroots movement at the core, and Bobby is our knight in shining armor leading the charge, and we'll support that together, regardless of where things go. We feel very strongly about the cause that we're fighting for, right? So, Julia, thank you so much for being with us this evening. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to connect with you again soon.
I feel the same way.